On this episode of Purposely Curious, we delve into the infamous Los Angeles hotel named Hotel Cecil. This hotel has been recently featured in a Netflix documentary where they discuss some of its history but focus on one case mostly. Here we discuss some of the deaths and serial killers linked to this scary hotel known around the world as the Hotel of Death. So, get nice and cozy as this episode starts now. Hello, Leonie.
Greetings, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How's everything with you?
Good. I was going to say it's been a few episodes since I've had you on, so I'm sure people are like, where's Leonie?
Well, I missed you. Numero uno. I missed you, so yes, I missed talking to you, so yeah, just, life, right? We both been busy, and you've had some great episodes in between, so I'm really happy about that. And yeah, we're back again.
Yeah, Leonie takes time to hang out with me virtually to record episodes of subjects that are very intriguing to me and to a lot of you guys listeners. So thank you again.
Always a pleasure. Always my pleasure.
But before we actually get into the episode, I did want to give some of the listeners a heads up that the last episode where we answered men's questions, Patrick, who happens to be the first guy that I answered questions for, really pissed off a lot of women. And I got a lot of messages. And so I, forwarded some of them to him, and he felt like he needed to come on to kind of talk. So we're going to be doing a follow-up episode to that, but we're going to be having women and men. And so we're going to be having more of a discussion, but at this point we're going to have men's intake as well.
Nice.
But also Patrick, the villain, as he is going to be known now, will be on to hopefully defend himself, make it better, or who knows, make it worse.
I can't wait to listen. That's going to be great.
Yes. So we'll see what happens. But on this episode, I wanted to talk about a famous hotel that is here in the greater Los Angeles area, actually in downtown Los Angeles. And this is the Hotel of Death. I didn't realize how famous it was worldwide. Although you and I had discussed it previously when we talked about the Night Stalker.
Okay, right.
You had brought it up on the episode. But, Leonie's always ahead of the game, guys. Always ahead of the game. I pick up on what he says, but I'm a little bit slow in fully picking up on what he's saying. And the next thing you know, there's a documentary about, it's about a case on Netflix. But, it just goes into the story of kind of like the hotel. And the next thing you know, I'm looking into it, and there's like a lot of history that's not necessarily positive. And as you guys know, for a living, I visit families with their terminally ill patients. And I have a family who I visit, and the daughter's always telling me shows I should watch. And she started telling me about the Netflix documentary and how her family from Mexico came out here like 5 years ago, and they specifically wanted to go take pictures outside of the hotel. And I was like, 5 years ago? So apparently there's a cult following around the world of this hotel that I didn't even realize myself.
Yeah, the Cecil Hotel is a dark place. I mean, it's been there forever. It's been there since 1927 when it opens its doors, and back then it was a place where people could go and stay and find a place to live for cheap. And then soon after, when that Great Depression hit, like, it really became like a low budget place to live. Like, people who were down on their luck and lost everything, could go there for cheap and stay there for a week at a time or a month or whatever. But, we're talking about the good days back when people were good people, and, not much was going on back then in terms of crime and all that, But then there was this big evolution between 1927 and present day, where that hotel changed, but not just the hotel, the surrounding neighborhood. And
Yeah.
as you found out, they call it Skid Row.
Yeah. Yeah. So the hotel is in downtown LA, and Skid Row is kind of like this section. And would you say it's the northeast part of downtown LA? I'm trying to picture it in my head. It's on the east side of downtown LA. I remember it as a girl. You always knew that people who were homeless were there.
Right.
But, it's obviously gotten worse every decade. So it's not the safest place. Just to kind of give you guys an idea, growing up, my mom would take me to downtown LA for either she was there to shop. People would go, to downtown LA to shop. There's like really cheap stores you can shop at.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid walking down the street with my mom and seeing this guy, may have been in his 20s at the time, but I was a little girl holding my mom's hand, and I see him like with a needle injecting himself in the veins.
Yeah.
On the street. As a kid, I didn't understand. I just remember looking at that and my mom pulling me away.
Right.
As an adult, I was like, oh, he was doing heavy duty shit, in broad daylight in downtown.
Right.
Downtown LA was a very vibrant city in the 20s, 30s before the Depression. At one point, it's been said that Broadway Boulevard in downtown LA was like the Broadway at the time. Since then, it's kind of deteriorated. And this is downtown as a whole. In the 80s, it was probably the worst. Not just where the hotel is in the Skid Row area. Like, downtown really went to shit.
It did. It was.
It went to shit. If you guys live out here in Los Angeles, it's only been in the last 10 years that there's been somewhat of a revitalization of downtown LA with new buildings, new architecture. So, but I would say for a good 20, 30 years, it literally went to shit.
Oh, yeah.
There's no other way to describe the entirety of downtown LA, with terrible landlords, buildings that were empty, falling apart.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of sad.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because at the time, this is what I tell people, and they don't believe me. At that time, you're talking about 30, 40, 30 years ago, like you said, 70s, 80s, and downtown and Hollywood were almost a mirror image of one another. Like all those tall buildings, the hotels, those, places people lived and all that. I mean, you could walk downtown anywhere, or you could walk Hollywood anywhere, and there was 4 feet of trash everywhere. It smelled awful everywhere. There's trash. You were walking through trash. Like there was homeless everywhere. There were people with mental problems, like, whether it's caused by, drugs or, mental health issues, whatever. People talk to themselves. Like that was just everywhere, So it was never safe. Downtown was never safe. Hollywood was never safe. It did start to change in the 2000s, like early 2000s, right around that time when, right after 9/11, around that time, is when we had Mayor Richard Riordan. He was the mayor of Los Angeles. And he was like the first guy that I remember who was like, hey, well, I'm a millionaire, so I'm only going to take $1 a year salary, Like, keep
I remember that.
Yeah, and he was the guy responsible for LA Live. Like, he built that whole LA Live. Like, so Staples Center, all that. Like, he was responsible for making that area, like, thrive again,
Yeah.
And then the same thing with Hollywood Highland. So now we have Hollywood Highland, Sunset Vine, like all these great rooftop bars and restaurants and clubs and all that. And it's all because really of him and revitalizing, so he was a visionary. He was with like, what's his name? The New York mayor who now everybody hates, Giuliani.
Oh my God.
Like Giuliani. I mean, everybody hates him now, but back in the day, he was responsible for rebuilding New York City,
Yeah.
It just takes one guy, one vision, and some ideas, and whatever. I mean, sure, you go to LA Live, it's expensive, and you're paying $35 a park. It's like it's not cheap, but it's a good experience to go dining, watch a Laker game, go watch a movie, whatever. It's like a whole different area now.
Yeah.
But Skid Row is still Skid Row.
Yeah. Yeah. Skid Row, yes, you do have people who are homeless because of the situation. A lot of people, the cost of living is really expensive.
Yeah.
But the reality is that there's a lot of mental health issues and there's a lot of drug addiction. I'm not trying to get sidetracked too much, but I do remember when I was in nursing school, actually being in a psych ward. I think the psych ward was like in the Rosemead area. I'm not sure. And there was a homeless man who was in there. And, being a naive young chick in there, right? I was like, so how can we help you get a job? And I will never forget what he said. He said, you think, like, he basically said he's homeless by choice. So he basically told me, I don't need help. Like, I don't know why people ask me that. Like, I'm homeless by choice. And that was the first time that I guess I realized there's more to the homeless problem in Skid Row.
Right.
It's a community. They're there for each other. They support each other, but they also support each other's vices. And unfortunately, if any of you guys know anyone with addiction, right, it's one of those hard things that if you don't have the support system, which we're known for not having, right?
Right.
It's just going to be a cycle that just seems to be worse and worse. But to not sidetrack back, right? Going back to the hotel, it was built with good intentions. Then the city fell on hard times. And so then you started getting people actually going to rent the rooms in the hotel. Now, correct me, it's Cecil or Cecil?
Cecil, the Cecil Hotel.
Cecil, yeah. Both of those were wrong. Cecil. Hotel Cecil.
But, people have different pronunciations. Either or is fine, I'm sure.
What is your first memory of this hotel? Because it's really famous. I mean, I knew about it, but I feel like I've learned more since the documentary and since speaking to you. I've definitely learned more. What is one of the first memories you have of this hotel of death?
So crazy thing is, at the time I was working in radio. I was working at K-Rock Radio. I had a desk job, working in marketing promotions. And I was always like watching, streaming news and all that. And it was, I don't know if you remember, there was a guy on the loose killing police officers. You remember that? His name was Christopher Dorner.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was ex-police officer who was taking out his vengeance on, other police officers and their families. So he was killing, and it was a citywide manhunt. And eventually they found him in Big Bear and they burned the cabin down and he died. So at that time, it was right when the Cecil Hotel story broke, and I'd never been around there because it's just it's a dark place of LA that you don't go near, And it was on the news, and I was watching the streaming news, and they're telling the story of this young Canadian girl went missing, and they think they found her, and then it was like there was helicopter footage showing you the top of the hotel, where they have the water tanks, and they were like, well, her body was found naked in a water tank. So I was thinking, whoa, that sounds like like a murder, and so, something very vicious, and so of course then the mysterious elevator video appeared online, and it was very, very creepy because we're just not sure what we're looking at. There's no idea as to this girl having any kind of mental problems at the time or anything. So it's like nobody knew what was up. All that people knew was, yes, that's her on the video. She's acting very strange. She's running from something. She's hiding from something in the hotel video, And it looked like she was being chased by something, but, and then a lot of weird things, like, she pressed all the buttons and the car wouldn't move, and so many strange things about that video. And that's when all the conspiracy broke, like, online. It was just everywhere. Everywhere was looking frame by frame. Look at her hands, look at her movements, look if there's an extra shoe you see for a split second, it's somebody else's shoe. Like, look at the buttons she pressed, look at the order she pressed. Like, it was just crazy. And I was a sucker, and I fell into it. Like, I was like looking into every story. Like, this is weird. Like, what does it mean? Where'd she go? Like, who killed her? Like, what? Was it a ghost? Was it something? Demonic? Was it? Like, I was looking for anything because it was just crazy story. But that was the first time I heard it. I was actually watching it live streaming, and then like I couldn't even go to sleep. Like, I was searching everything. I went home and was searching some more, and But yeah, it's pretty crazy. How about you? When's the first time you heard about this place?
Well, the first time I heard about it was the same story with this Canadian girl. The issue was that I went through the same thing. It was kind of like when the videos came out after. That's when I'm a huge downtown LA fan. Those who know me know that I was obsessed with downtown LA growing up, especially in my 20s. I had so much pride in the history. I took, trips of the Broadway corridor. Like I was like the only one in my 20s, and everyone was in their 60s getting tours of the old buildings, all the swap meets that used to be theaters.
Right.
So I was always obsessed. So I started looking into it, and then that's when, not so much that I knew how bad it was, but I realized it had a bad reputation. That's when I heard like, oh, this place is haunted because 2 serial killers had stayed here.
Yeah.
But I didn't think much of it at the time. And now that I'm in this podcast world where I feel like as I'm older, I'm obsessed with a bunch of shit like this. Like,
right.
I'm like, you had mentioned like the Black Dahlia.
Yes.
I had no idea. And we'll go into that as well, right? But I didn't realize there was so much history in that hotel.
Right.
When I say I heard there was serial killers that lived there, I didn't put the Night Stalker. Like I didn't know. I'm not as educated in that sense as I am now. So now I'm like, oh yeah, like this place has really shady vibes. Some people are, think it's haunted, right? There is a TikTok guy that lives across the street. It just happened to come up on my algorithm. He lives across the street in a studio or a loft from the hotel, and he literally puts TikToks of him filming the hotel, the windows, or he'll try to get his drone over there. And those they've gone viral because sometimes people are like, I swear I see a girl there, or like shit like that. Like, wow. But it's definitely now it's on a whole nother level of fame.
Right.
But I wanted us to kind of look at some of these people who have lived here. Obviously, everyone, if you guys haven't watched Hotel Cecil, the Hotel of Death. I'll just call it the Hotel of Death.
Yeah, it's what's it called? It's called Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel.
Yes.
The documentary.
Go ahead and watch it.
It's on Netflix.
Yes. If it's only 4 episodes, I still need to watch the last one. I've been really busy, so I tried to finish it before this recording. But
the last one's the best, by the way. The last one's the best.
Yeah. So watch it. But I wanted us, the documentary will probably go into the case of the Canadian girl. But I wanted to look more into like the shady history, which the documentary also kind of goes into.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. So where should we start, Leonie? Let's see. Would you say the first... So it was built in 1924, right? And it was a destination supposedly for business travelers and tourists.
Right.
And then, it did pretty well. Then, the Depression hit. Do you know... Let's see, 1927 was the first documented suicide that I could find.
Yes. I think, it was around that time. And I know
his name was... Yeah, his name, at least from what I found, his name was Percy Armand Cook. He was 52 years old, shot himself in the head while he was in the hotel after, I guess he was not doing well with his wife.
Right.
And so I believe that was the first suicide. And so it opened in 1924. So 3 years later, it was the first death of many. Or maybe even... We'll get into like the whole like who's lived there, right?
Right.
But apparently there was a lot of suicides and quote unquote murders there, which you will see in the documentary. They kind of do a good job of at least painting the picture that it's a shady place.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So now the Black Dahlia, was she in the 30s?
That would have been 1940 in the 40s. She died January 15th of 47. Her body was found. Her name was Elizabeth Short, and she's an actress. She's a Hollywood, little starlight, up and coming actress, and The thing about her was that her body was found in Lemert Park, which is now like in the La Cienega area, just south of Hollywood, off of Norton Avenue.
Yeah.
And on the morning of January 15th, 1947, her body was found. Do you know how her body was found?
Yeah, it was cut in really weird places and little pieces taken off. I actually was fascinated with the Black Dahlia.
Yes.
Growing up, I even read, I love to read. I read a book about it, and I saw pictures of the crime scene. It's gory.
It's weird.
But
like when you
it's
see
very
those,
weird.
when you see those photos, like, because it's like obviously she wasn't killed there; she was brought there, and you're kind of like, well, where's the blood? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't see blood, which is really strange.
Yeah. So how was she linked to? Oh, by the way, before we move on, when I saw the pictures of the crime scene, so my mom and my parents live not too far from there. It was just fields. Like if you were to drive there, it's literally like cement city, cement jungle now. But there was like, she was dumped on fields, which is amazing for me to see in those pictures because I can't picture the Lamart Park area as green fields. I mean, I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, but was she spotted at the hotel before she died, or did she stay at the hotel?
Yeah, there's stories that she stayed at the Cecil Hotel before her death. It's not certain if it was the night before or recently, but around that time she definitely stayed there. So there's a weird, like, you know what I'm saying, with when you connect the Cecil to talk about serial killers or people that killed some, it's like you think about her and it's like, well, if she stayed there, was it somebody who's possibly living there that followed her and then or killed her and then somehow brought her body there? It's like it's just a weird like ending to her story, but yeah, she was known to stay at the Cecil, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So would you say that would be like the first famous, how would I explain it? Like the first famous, like, connection to this hotel of someone in the murder
Probably
mystery world.
Yeah, because you got to think that she's a 22-year-old young 22-year-old hot little actress, So when something like that happens, like that's headline news,
Yeah.
Or like, I'm sure there's other, murders and stuff happening around the city and state at the time, but when it's a 22-year-old, Hollywood type, it's like, whoa, like, what happened? Like, and it's not just like, she was shot or stabbed, but it was like, no, she was cut in half. And whoever brought her body parts there, like, put them together,
Yeah.
And it's so weird because, like I said, you see the crime scene photos and you're like, well, where's the trail of blood? Like, it's so bizarre,
Yeah. Yeah. And in 1964, there was another famous LA person. Did you hear about the pigeon Goldie Osgood?
Yes.
So she was known, she, I guess, used to live at the hotel, but was known for feeding the pigeons in Perch Park area. But she was found dead in her room. She had been raped and beaten, stabbed. And so she was found in the hotel in 1964. So that also made the news because every local person kind of in the downtown area knew her. And just think of like, there's a movie where there's a lady I can't think of the movie, but I just remember seeing this movie where there's like a lady with a coat and a hat feeding the pigeons and she comes off a little scary, but she's not. I can't remember what childhood movie that was, but just think of that. Yeah. So that one, that one went unsolved. Now in the 1980s, we have Richard Ramirez.
Yes.
Who we talked about a few episodes back. And I did not realize that Richard Ramirez was a psycho motherfucker, excuse my language. And I remember telling you this, I feel like this is one of the worst serial killers ever,
Yeah.
But apparently he would stay there. And I've heard a few stories that maybe weren't in the documentary, But I mean, if he was high on crazy drugs and you know what I mean, like staying there and then would drive and kill people, I mean, that to me is crazy.
Yeah, it's. I still have like so many questions about his motives and why what he was doing, because, like I said, it's just his case is so unique because he just did it. He had his MO was just being random. You know, there was no like, oh, he's going after women and blondes and young, and you know, it's like no, old, young, 9-year-old girl, men, you know, old men, you know, what it didn't matter. Like knife, bullet, gun, anything. He used whatever he could. But the crazy stories of him staying at the Cecil Hotel while he was committing the 84, 85 Night Stalker murders in LA, you know, is that the Cecil Hotel was just overrun with drugs, prostitution, parties, you know, and you know, homeless and crime, that Richard Ramirez would go on a killing spree, come back covered in blood, or sometimes even take his clothes off and throw his bloody clothes into the dumpster outside, and then just walk in his underwear, still, you know, have remnants of blood on him, you know, walking in his underwear right through the lobby, you know, right through the, you know, elevator to his floor. It's just like, and nobody would say a thing. Nobody would even look his way because that was not unusual. That is so creepy.
That just tells you how they literally were not doing good financially, that they would fucking rent a room to anyone. Yeah. It's fucking crazy. If you guys also haven't seen that documentary of the Night Stalker on Netflix, you should watch it. It's pretty intense. So to have him staying there, and, you know, we talked about how a lot of drug use was there. It was essentially like a crack house, it seems like. Yeah. But people were paying dirt cheap money to stay there.
Right.
And, you know, in this documentary, with the documentary, I started looking into it. There was another serial killer that stayed there, which I didn't realize. I think he was from, was it Australia or New Zealand?
From Austria, actually.
Austria. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, so I just found out about him, but there's also rumors that he probably was staying there and then going to kill people in the area as well.
Yeah, and he's a creepy case because he was sentenced to life in prison in 1976 for killing an 18-year-old girl, okay?
And this is in Austria?
In Austria. However, in 85, they petitioned for him to have him pardoned, and eventually he was released in 1990. So in that time, he comes to LA, right? He goes to LAPD and says, I'm press, right? I'm doing some story. And he wants to do a ride-along. So he does a ride-along with LAPD, right? And the LAPD say, sure, you know. They think this guy's legitimate, you know, press, you know, writer, or, you know, somebody covering some story, right? Later, it's determined that, because he specifically, you know, also mentioned that he wanted to go to Cecil and he wanted to stay there, and he chose that because of Richard Ramirez. Like, he looked up to Richard Ramirez, but the cops didn't know that. So later, it was determined that he had murdered 8 women in Europe, and they were all killed with their own bras. Okay, they were connected to him. Yes, eventually they caught him, and he was charged with 11 murders, okay? So once they connected that, and Interpol, Europe, whatever, called LAPD, and they were like, get this guy, arrest him, because we have him on 11 murders, okay? And 3 took place in LA, so he killed 3 people here, okay? And he was arrested, and they were like, holy shit, this guy was pretending to be a news reporter this whole time, and he was a serial killer, not only in Austria, but also here in LA. And on the night that he was sentenced, he killed himself by suicide. He suicide. So it was just like, that's why we don't hear too much about him. But yeah, he was another crazy guy that basically just wanted to copycat Richard Ramirez, you know, but he didn't take his MO. He didn't do the same type of killings, but it was mostly, you know, probably rape and, you know, some kind of strangulation. But still, God, another weird, creepy guy that stayed at the Cecil.
Yeah, and then I read that he worked for one of the newspapers out here.
Yes.
Which I was like, and they knew who he was. Like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah, but I mean, this is the day before this is before computers and background checks.
yeah,
Where like there's no system, right? So anybody, if you were a cool actor, you could lie your way through anything.
yeah, yeah,
It's so scary. And yeah, another weird, creepy guy living at the Cecil Hotel.
yeah. So, what do you think? Do you think there's paranormal or things that are calling people there? Or do you think it's just a coincidence that the hotel fell on hard times, would rent to anyone, and next thing you know, it was decades of negative suicides, murders, domestic violence, serial killers staying there? Like, what do you think?
That's a really great, interesting question, and I'm gonna balance both sides of the story, okay? Because, like, just like you mentioned, I want everybody to go watch this Cecil Hotel, documentary on Netflix because it tells you a great story, a history about the place, but also focuses on the disappearance of Alyssa Lamb, right, the young Canadian girl. But one thing that is not touched upon is the paranormal aspect. And that is interesting because I've talked to paranormal experts, and all three of them that I spoke to have said the same thing. That place is so dark that one of them called it, she says, that place is a portal to hell. Like,
Oh,
there are
wow.
places on Earth that are so dark, right? They're legitimately placed. They're just portals to hell, literally. And that place is still open today, not as a functional hotel for anybody to stay at, but there are residents that still live there. They have, contracts and whatever. So, well, however many floors that is, I don't remember if it's 3 or 5 floors, but people are still living there. I don't know
Yeah.
who these people are.
And it's named
You know?
differently now.
Yeah, they changed the name after the Alyssa Lamb, and all that, and it got so much bad press. They decided to call it, what was it, Stay on Main?
Yeah, I think it might have been bought before she came in. They were trying to revitalize it.
Yes.
Um,
And it's
but
interesting because they split it. It's like Stay on Main was the new hotel, but then the Cecil was like the living, it was so weird. They're trying to combine, like they had two different doors, but if you'd walk through, they'd both lead you to the same lobby, the same elevators. So I thought that was really fascinating. But yeah, that place, like, do I believe in the paranormal? Yes. I mean, there's just a lot of dark energy there.
mm-hmm.
Like when you have people ODing on drugs and, killing in the name or because of use, in the name of the occult or something like that, or, doing drugs that fuel your state of mind, into a killing spree. That's just really, really dark, dark, dark stuff. And it's like, well, why? The question is why? Like, is there a story before the story? Like, is that area before the hotel even went up? Because this might be before news, right? Like, is there any documented cases of something really bad in that vicinity, on that ground?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did something bad happen there? Were there rituals, being had there? Were there people being killed? Like was there just always bad energy just because? And then eventually the hotel was built, and then it just now sits on land that's just darkness. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but every paranormal person says two of them won't step foot in that place, not even near it. And trust me, they're not afraid of the area. They're like I'll go in with with people, groups and all that, but I still don't want to go near it in it because they're scared, about the negative dark energies that might attach to them.
Right.
So do I believe in that? I do believe in that. I don't know what is there, what is true, but it's hard to ignore that, when you have those, so many suicides and murders and countless probably assaults and rapes, I'm sure, you know, stuff that doesn't get reported. You know, it's like, that's just a dark place, you know? It's like, you know, like how else do you explain it, you know?
Yeah. And it's crazy because a lot of us are finding out about it because of the Netflix documentary, but it's been pretty big in pop culture. In 1987, U2 had a concert on the roof of the building next to the hotel.
Yep.
So
I was there for that, by the way.
Oh, you were?
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess the hotel comes out in Where the Streets No Name was shot.
Yeah, well, the streets have no name, and it was supposed to be the rooftop of the $1 Million Hotel, I believe. But it ended up being some liquor or something. And if you watch, the cool thing is you can actually watch that video. There's an extended version of that video. Like the song, you know, is 3 minutes long, whatever. There's like a 10-minute video of that song, of that before, during the performance, then after, you know, because it got shut down by the police. So it's pretty cool because you hear like Kiss FM radio DJs, like, I don't know if it was Rick Deeds or somebody was like, hey, if you're downtown LA, like, you know, if you think of going there, like, just don't, because the streets are blocked off and, you know, police are not calling it, you know, a riot zone, whatever, you know. And it's funny when you watch the video and what they considered an unlawful assembly or riot back then, which were just people hanging out, watching, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like nobody was throwing shit. Nobody was being trampled, or no police were, you know what I'm saying? But just the fact that they were scared of mass crowds, that they would just call it, you know, unlawful assembly. This is a riot zone. We're shutting you down, you know? But yeah, you can watch that video. It's pretty cool because you actually see the band on the rooftop and you see the sign that says "Stay on Main," like the sign to the Cecil's right there.
Beautiful.
Really creepy.
Yeah. I'm going to have to Google that.
Yeah.
So it's U2 and the song is Where the Streets Have No Name.
Yes.
1987. So
Yes.
I guess a lot of us are going to check out that music video after this episode.
Yeah. And then, by the way, fun fact, that was my first rock band experience.
Wow.
Because I had a crush on a girl who was like, her sister was best friends with my cousin.
Oh,
we were all going to the Coliseum to see that show, that tour, but they did a video shoot, and then she was like, we're all going to downtown, like, get on the bus. So we all went to downtown, you know. So I was young, but that was my first experience seeing a rock band. And the fact that I loved that record, that album, you know, and all because of this girl that I had a crush on, loved the album. You know, it's kind of one of those, you know, she turned me on to it. The next thing you know, it's like it grew on me very quickly. And I'm like, I love this band, you know. And then the fact that we saw them live, you know, on the rooftop, you know, from 2 blocks away, you know, whatever. And then later we saw the Coliseum show, you know. So it's one of those, for me, it's a special time, you know, because I was just so young, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
oh, I love it.
But yeah, pretty crazy. I always look at that video because I'm trying to find, like, are we in that? Like, are we in that crowd right there? Like, you know, where are we? You know, so
Yeah.
It's so funny, so funny.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's cute. Now I know because you host a podcast with your co-host of the horror culture.
Yes.
Now, again, Leonie was my first guest where we talked about horror culture. I'm sure you've seen or heard of American Horror Story,
Yes.
the show. So apparently, and I've not watched the show myself, but apparently season 5, labeled Hotel,
Yes.
is based off of this hotel.
Oh yeah.
And this was in 2015, so they already were on top of the history.
Yes.
What I did see is basically, you know, all those serial killers come and meet in this hotel.
Yeah. In fact, if you don't want to watch the whole season, you don't have to. But that's a season I believe that Lady Gaga won her Emmy or Golden Globe for, because she was amazing in that season. But yes, the season it's called Hotel, and it's not called the Cecil Hotel. It's called the Hotel Cortez. So
Yeah.
wow, not very different, huh?
No, and I didn't realize that it was based off of this. So
Yes.
I only found this out recently. So I didn't realize, supposedly I'm like, I know everything about the downtown LA history, and I didn't know any of this. So
Yeah, it's actually a fun episode. And the episode that you can watch is called Devil's Night. which is Halloween night, Devil's Night. Just watch that episode, and it's really interesting because Richard Ramirez makes an appearance, and so does oh my god, what's his name? Who used to eat the boys? Oh god, from Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of his name right now. The other killer that was always going after men and boys, and he would take their body parts.
Oh, I don't know. You're the expert.
It was like him. It was Richard Ramirez, and is it Eileen Wuornos? Is she the one that was killing the men prostitutes?
I don't know.
So
she's the one who had a Hollywood movie with Charlize Theron.
Yes.
Who won an Oscar.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I know her picture, but like I picture her in my mind.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's who you're talking about.
Yeah, she makes an appearance in that episode too.
Oh wow. Yeah, I saw the Zodiac Killer was in there.
Yeah, it's like all the worst people show up in that episode. I believe, I can't remember if it's to party with Lady Gaga, like on Halloween night. So they call it Devil's Night. But the actor who plays Richard Ramirez looks a lot like him. Like they nailed him. This is crazy.
Yeah. Oh man. It's pretty intense that this hotel. And now with the documentary, like people who maybe didn't know about it are gonna know about it.
Right.
So I'm assuming once COVID is over, people are gonna be flocking to take pictures outside.
Yeah, they already are. Like I already had a couple of friends like, hey, did a drive by, watch the documentary. I'm like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you go down there? Like, it's like I don't, but yeah, it's just it's a weird place, but it's like, I think the cherry on top was the Alyssa Lamb story, because it was so tragic. It happened to a young 21-year-old, Canadian student, and her intentions were good. Her intentions were like, hey, taking a mental break, gonna go to San Diego and then go to LA, and it's like, cool, get a getaway, right, from your college studies and all that stuff, and it's like, she ends up dead, and it's just like, oh, it's just,
yeah,
it doesn't sit well with,
Yeah. So apparently, even before this all happened, this hotel was known worldwide by people who are into murder enthusiasts. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah.
It was already famous as being one of the deadliest top 3 hotels in the world.
Yeah.
So in 1927, Percy Armand Cook died of suicide. November 31, Mr. Norton died ingesting poison.
Yeah.
September 1932, Benjamin Dodich died of suicide, gunshot to the head. In July 1934, Sergeant Louis Borden died of suicide, slit his throat. March 1937, Grace Magro died, fell off the building. January 1938, Roy Thompson died, also fell off the building. Fell off, jumped off, pushed off. We'll never know, right?
That's
May
crazy.
1939, Erwin Neblet died, also ingested poison. That's the second one. We have January 1940, Dorothy Seeger. She also ingested poison. September 1944, we have a newborn who was thrown out of a window.
Yes.
Terrible.
Yeah.
November 1947, Robert Smith died, fell off the building. October 22, 1954, Helen Gurney fell off the building. February 1962, Julia Frances Moore fell off the building. October 1962, actually it's 2 people, Pauline Auden and George Gianni.
Right.
They both died of suicide. They jumped from the building as well. June 1964, this is for Miss Pigeon Goldie, who we spoke to earlier. She was stabbed, beaten, murdered, essentially.
Right.
December 1975, we have Allison Lowell, fell from the building. September 1st, 1992, someone fell off the building as well. This was a 20 to 30-year-old male who was never identified. He was like a John Doe. February 2013, we have the famous Alyssa Lamb, which was an accidental drowning, and which is a lot of what you will see in the documentary on Netflix. And since then, in June 2015, someone fell off the building as well, 28-year-old. So,
Jeez.
That's a lot. There's a lot of jumping off, falling off, being pushed off, poisoning off the building. That's crazy. There's a lot of bad juju there.
Yeah. I mean, I could see suicide, sure, no problem, but I can also see, the jumping off, pushing off. Some of those have to be somebody throwing somebody off,
Yeah, but also kind of like what you said, the serial killer from Austria who specifically sought out this hotel because of a former serial killer, right?
Right.
Maybe people who they would hear like, this is the hotel people commit suicide at, and say, I'm gonna go rent a room there and jump off the building. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them were suicide, but sometimes they would say it's hard to tell if it was suicide or not.
Right.
The one that broke my heart was the lady who literally threw her kid out the window.
Yeah.
A newborn who she just had there.
Yeah, I wonder if that was like a postpartum thing, or just, some serious mental, psychosis or dementia or something, not dementia, but psychosis, or what do you call it, a delusion, or something, because that's just evil,
Yeah, so there's definitely, these are all the deaths, and maybe there's more. I don't know. It's hard for the hotel not to be able to report all of the deaths, or have them gone unreported. So I'm assuming this might be all of it. I don't know. But you never know in LA.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this documentary was that there was a statistic. I'm going to have to go back and watch it because this number shocked me. I don't know if you caught it, but they said that in the Skid Row area, right? They either mentioned, now the number is either going to be 1,800, 8,000, or 18,000. So it's one of those three numbers, okay? I remember there being 18 in the numbers. So maybe it's 1,800, maybe it's 18,000. The number 1,800 or 18,000 women go missing in Skid Row every year.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow. Like when I heard that it stunned me for a second. Not in LA, just in Skid Row. My question is, where are the bodies?
Yeah. And just think about it, guys. I was telling you guys, if you guys have been to LA or live out here, downtown LA is very small. It's not Chicago. It's not Manhattan. It's very relatively small.
Yes.
So when we talk about Skid Row, it's literally on the east, northern side of downtown LA. I think it's, would you say you can drive from the east to the west of downtown LA? It's what? Less than 5 miles. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's not that big at all.
It's not big, guys. No. And if all these people are going missing just in that area, and unfortunately, it's a sad thing about, homelessness here.
Right.
I know that if you guys are listening in other countries, you may not have the problem of homelessness like we do here, but it's pretty sad.
Yeah.
So, they'll be missing. No one's there to look for them. Or if loved ones are like, my sister, my mom, she disappeared years ago. They don't know where they are. A lot of times people from other states end up out in Skid Row. And it's just, I can see why they go missing and no one knows anything. And that's one of the saddest parts of Skid Row.
Yeah.
Or parts, the whole situation is sad there, but it's, I don't know that every country has homelessness, but it's pretty bad out here. If you guys were to Google homelessness, Los Angeles is, and I would say the greater Los Angeles area, it's a big fucking problem. And
yeah, now ever since COVID, it's just 10 times worse now. And it's not like Skid Row bad, but it's bad in the sense that
it's spreading.
You're seeing tents everywhere now, and it's just like what happened, and it's like, I guess people are being kicked out of their homes or apartments and stuff, and that's sad,
People fall in hard times,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, drug addiction is a serious problem
Oh, yeah.
that just isn't there's not enough funds that the government puts into mental health and rehabilitation, and that's a fucking fact.
Yeah.
We just gotta, people aren't gonna want to be helped, and if we're not equipped to help them, then it's just gonna be a worsening cycle. But yeah, so this Hotel Cecil. Oh, I give up.
Oh,
so I'm glad we were able to discuss this. Like, again, if you want to watch the documentary on Netflix, it really goes into the history of it, but it focuses mostly on this one case.
Right.
But for me, it was like eye-opening to see that there was a lot going on in this hotel outside of the death in 2013 of Alyssa Lamb from Canada.
Yes.
And so to see more, and then to see that there was already a culture following this hotel, and that's why, the fact that 2 serial killers stayed here, that there's all these deaths and suicides, and there's a lot of bad energy here. And so that's what I wanted to kind of discuss. So who better to discuss that with than with Leone?
Who is that guy?
I don't know. I'm still looking for him. Have you seen him?
Yeah. No, it's an interesting place to talk about. I myself have no interest in going down there.
Same.
For me, pictures are cool. I'll watch YouTube videos. That's cool. I've already talked to 2 different pop stars, by the way, and you'll hear more about that soon. But 2 different pop stars who shot music videos there, by the way, in the lobby of that hotel. And completely freaked out. They're like, we're fucked. Like, we're wrapping. We're done. We're out of here. Like, just weird, dark energies there,
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't even fucking film anything there. I won't go in there. And I'm a believer of bad shit like that, so I will not go anywhere near it.
Oh, yeah. Same here. I mean, I believe that there is something dark there, and I don't know why it's still open. I don't know why people still live there. I mean, there's probably some, not maybe some rent control issue or something where you can't evict those people.
Yeah.
But I don't, I want to know, who are these people? Like, why are you still here? Like, I mean.
Well, I mean, for them, it's probably a way of life, having all this bad energy, people fighting,
Right.
And so it may be the cheapest thing they can afford. And so for legalities, they have to stay.
Yeah.
I know that there are plans to maybe hopefully reopen it as a hotel, but after this documentary, I mean, I think people are going to want to flock there to take pictures, all the IG stars or whatever.
Yes, of course.
But I think a big majority of people are not going to want to stay there. Yeah.
I do know that it's been recently bought by some firm in New York, some investment firm. That's recently, that's over the last year or 2, I think. Now, my question is the hotel labeled as historic? I don't recall if it is or isn't. If it is historic, they can't touch it. Now, if it's not historic, I am willing to bet they're going to knock that place down in the next 5 years and build some kind of fancy ass livable, building there somehow. I mean, which is a challenge because outside the doors, you still have Skid Row. So you got to clean up Skid Row. Otherwise you don't have a nice hotel,
Yeah, I agree.
So it's going to be interesting what they do there, but yeah, if it's historic, that's going to be crazy because no matter what name you put on that place, it's still dark. It's still, it's still tainted with all the, bad behaviors and activities that have gone on there.
Yeah. So if you guys want to visit the hotel, it's located on 640 South Main Street in downtown Los Angeles. I do not want to visit, so I will not be, but if you wanted to, that's the address. And like I said, it's based on his American Horror, right? Did I read that right?
It's American Horror Story.
Thank you.
Yes.
Season 5 is based off of this hotel, and that's one of the reasons they have the serial killers there, and there's a lot of information out there, and so there's probably a lot of things we didn't cover today, but there's more to the story. And so I thought we would do an episode on it.
Yeah, it's a dark place. It's a dark place. I suggest you guys watch the documentary and look into it. It's just, one of those places in LA history that you're like, why is that place still there? It's like
well, we'll just pretend we don't it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Just like the other way. So thank you for joining me, Leonie. Can we do this again?
Of course, anytime you want. My pleasure. I always enjoy doing this with you.
Yes, thank you, and so do I. And that's one of the things I was telling him. I was like, I know a few people are like, where's Leonie? It's been like 3 episodes he's not on.
Oh, that's funny. I'm like, somebody actually missed me? That's too funny.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. So, thanks for listening, guys. And me and Leonie will be back again with another subject.
Yes.
Bye, everyone. That was episode 48 of the Purposely Curious podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on most podcast platforms. And follow us on social media at Purposely Curious on Instagram and at Purposely C-Pod on Twitter. That's Purposely, the letter C, Pod. Until next time, you know what to do.